Good evening. You're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. On the show this evening, India Inc. up in arms after the Maharashtra government's move to extend quotas for Muslims and Marathas to the private sector. Should quotas be made compulsory for Indian industry as well? Also tonight, the Modi government moves to make major changes to the land acquisition law, making it much easier to acquire land. But are the changes anti-farmer and industry friendly? That's in the next 30 minutes or so. But first tonight, our top story. Uproar in Maharashtra, first over the state cabinet's controversial ordinance for reservations for Muslims and Marathas, and now to extend those reservations to the private sector as well. India Inc. says it will not accept this and is demanding a rollback. Others have already questioned the legality of the Muslim quota and even whether Marathas are really a backward caste.
We at IMC are not appreciating the reservation, the way it has been presented currently in Maharashtra. We would like to engage with the political leadership and talk through them.
India Inc. planning to approach the Maharashtra government, asking it to roll back its decision for reservation for Marathas and Muslims in jobs, at least those in the private sector. According to the ordinance passed by the state, all those industries or organizations which have got concessions on land prices or financial aid from the government will have to extend the reservation. The move, seen as an attempt to reap political benefits in an election year, has already been challenged in court on the basis that such quotas are unconstitutional and claiming that Marathas are not a backward caste. While the government defends the move, saying it will create jobs, the opposition says it is populist.
फाइनेंशियल वीक होने से बच्चों को एजुकेशन नहीं दे पा रहे, नौकरी में भी स्थान नहीं मिल रहा है.
परंतु मी त्याच्यावरती बोललेलं नाही. याचं कारण आधी सरकारचा हेतू नीट करू द्या आणि हे आरक्षण कोर्टामध्ये खरंच टिकतंय का नुसतंच त्यांनी निवडणुकीच्या तोंडावरती एक फसवेगिरी केलेली आहे. कारण काँग्रेस राष्ट्रवादी फसवेगिरी करण्यामध्ये खूप चलाक आहे.
But some prominent Mumbaikars feel this will send a wrong signal.
It is an unjust ordinance to begin with. I mean, the whole thing is a nonsense from beginning to end. Nothing but blatant shame-making politics.
While the government claims it has delivered on a long-standing promise, implementing the new quota, especially for corporates, is not going to be easy. With Saurabh Gupta in Mumbai, Rohit Rajan for NDTV.
Well, there's been much controversy and much debate about whether the Maharashtra cabinet should have brought in this ordinance in the first place. As I said, the legality of the Muslim quota is under a cloud, which the state government is in a sense brazening out. And there are questions about whether Marathas are really a backward caste. But now to extend that to the private sector has brought in a completely new dimension to this debate. Rahul Narvekar, spokesperson of the NCP, joins us tonight. Sanjay Jha, spokesperson of the Congress party. Nalin Kohli of the BJP is with us this evening. Here in the studio with me for a change in Delhi, Kumar Ketkar. Also joining us tonight, Vikram Singh Mehta, the chairman of Brookings India, and author and columnist and economist Gurcharan Das. Rahul Narvekar, to you first. Why make these quotas mandatory for the private sector? It's one thing to have them in government jobs and in government educational institutions, but why force it down the throat of Indian industry? They're saying they won't accept it.
At the outset, let me tell you the background based on which these quotas have been implemented in the state of Maharashtra. Well, it's the duty of the state government and they've been under the Constitution of India, the directive principles under the Constitution of India makes it mandatory for the state government to provide for measures to ensure that the downtrodden and the underprivileged section of the society is taken care of and make adequate arrangements to accommodate them, and on the basis of this these quotas have been introduced. Now when the motive is for welfare measures, when the motive is for upliftment of the downtrodden, when the motive is for upliftment of the economically backward, then in that case I think it is also necessary not to restrict this only to the public sector or only to government undertakings, but to the private sector as well. Because development has to be holistic. It cannot be restricted to just government sectors or to public undertakings. And therefore, I think this is a very justified move by the government of Maharashtra. Insofar as the Muslim quota is concerned, this is not unique to the Maharashtra government. Muslim quotas are available in more than 8 states in this country.
You're right. The Muslim quota is
You've
in
got
other states,
Karnataka,
but the
which
matter
has
is
a
pending
Muslim
before the
quota of
Supreme
3%.
Court. Its legality has been strongly questioned. But the point is, and I'll take this.
Maybe so.
I'll take this to good.
No,
but that
if it has been challenged,
yeah, it has been challenged, and the court hasn't had the final word on it.
It is illegal.
But the point is, Sanjay Jha, that
Maybe so,
why
that
make
does
it
not
compulsory? Why make these quotas compulsory, Sanjay Jha? Why not let companies decide, voluntarily if they're willing to have a quota, to admit people on certain lines? I mean, you're compromising on merit, is the argument.
Nidhi, very quickly, just adding to what Rahul Narwarkar has already said, I don't want to repeat that. But even where the Muslim quota is concerned, let me issue a clarification here. That this was started by the Mandal Commission, which identified backward classes amongst the Muslim community. So it has been prevalent already in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala with varying percentages, and it has not been contested by any of the governments. Even the BJP, which was there in Karnataka, adhered to it and in fact saw that as a very positive way to kind of reduce the kind of disparities that we have in our society. Now, as far as the issue, therefore, when we look at reservations, I think it's very important to put this broad perspective before the debate begins. Rahul is absolutely right. You have a constitutional obligation. And, whether you call it a positive affirmation or positive discrimination or affirmative action, the truth is any government in any society with the kind of disparities we have, and a huge caste bias which has existed for decades and decades, and actually accentuates the lopsidedness in our society. It's a responsibility. Now there are some issues which will go up to the Supreme Court, but please remember, Nidhi, the Supreme Court has intervened many times on the issue of
there is a
reservations.
PIL currently in the Bombay High Court contesting
time.
whether Marathas are even a backward caste. I mean, if you look at the statistics, more than half of the MLAs elected in Maharashtra from 1962 to 2004 have been Marathas. You've had 17 chief ministers since 1960. No, 1 second, Rahul Narwarkar. These are the statistics that have been put out there from various people, including in this PIL. You've had 17 CMs in Maharashtra, 10 of them have been Marathas. 1 second. You never had the Maharashtra State Backward Class Commission in ever calling Marathas as, in fact they called them an economically and politically forward caste. So Sanjay Jha, is this cynical politics that's being played out before the assembly polls? Why should Marathas get this kind of reservation? 16% is a lot. And then to extend it to the private sector.
Nidhi, let me tell you, I think the perception is largely founded on the fact that most of the chief ministers or powerful politicians of Maharashtra have been Marathas. The more legitimate issue, the grievance that we really need to address is, are Marathas as a community getting adequate representation in public services? And this has to go through a rigorous test. There have been surveys, there are committees, and if anybody challenges, these are surveys. If they don't pass the test, they will be rejected. But the government has a confidence based on the social and economic criteria on the findings of that committee that there is been a discrimination in terms of underrepresentation. But I'm not going to comment on it till it actually becomes a law. But the government is confident of the ordinance going through.
There is, I quote to you a report in the Indian Express. One second, Rahul Narwarkar. The Maharashtra Planning Board, according to the Maharashtra Planning Board and a former chairman of the Maharashtra Planning Board, about 55% of educational institutions across Maharashtra are controlled by leaders who belong to the Maratha community. There are 200 sugar factories, of which 168 are controlled by Marathas. So you have some cooperative banks, 70% of which have Marathas as directors. So Nalin Kohli, firstly, on the principle of this reservation, do you have a problem?
That's exactly the point I'm making.
No, but the point is that you can't say they're underrepresented. They are there in the legislature, they're there in business, they're controlling the sugar factories and so on. So, A, Nalin Kohli, is the principle of this very flawed, and B, does the BJP believe that extending it to the private sector is a gross mistake?
Well, there are 4 issues here. The first is about religious-based constitution, religious-based reservation. That's anti-constitution. The examples that are being given are actually on the basis of backwardness, not on the fact that they are Muslims. So I think, that's really where we need to make the fine point, and it's under legal challenge. The Constituent Assembly debates right throughout whatever we talk about our movement and progression as a democratic nation. Reservation on the basis of religion goes against the very idea of the Constitution. Now, Mr. Sanjay Jha can nod his head in disagreement, but the fact of the matter is, what is the stated position is. Until that changes, I can't really expect it to, be the correct position.
Nalin, just to interrupt
the second
you,
part
the
of that
Maharashtra
is,
reservation
Sanjay,
is
let
based
him
on
finish,
economic backwardness of the
Let me
Muslims.
finish.
Let him finish.
Not in
Sanjay.
religion.
Just
No,
give
no,
us
it's
a
important
second.
to clarify.
Why do you get
He's
so
made a comment,
excited?
so I need
Why
to
do you get so
emphatic
excited if I'm
here.
making a point?
I'm not getting excited. I'm just trying to tell you the truth.
Well, I mean, you
It's
made
based
many
on
comments I don't
economic
agree with,
backwardness of the
Sanjay,
Muslims.
but let me finish my point.
Sanjay, I promise to come
Well, I
back.
can't expect patience from the Congress party because you all work on the politics of entitlement. When we speak, we should be heard. When others speak, we should question. Go ahead, say your point.
No, Nalin, please finish your point because it's important to...
I think somebody is disturbed. If I'm excited, somebody is disturbed.
We're moving away from the debate. Yes, Nalin, finish your
I'm
point.
not disturbed.
Yeah.
I'm not disturbed. I just want to reiterate we are in a democracy. This is not the Congress Inc., controlled by a family. So I just want to make that point. So let's get back to the debate. Now, that's one point. The second point is, why is this coming up? You've just had the Lok Sabha elections, and the Congress and the NCP, after 15 years of glorious rule in Maharashtra, didn't win virtually any seats in the state. So the people voted for the BJP, Shiv Sena, Mahajot or Grand Alliance. And of course, the message is clear what's going to happen down the line. So they are desperate that at least if nothing else, we shouldn't have such a negligible position in Maharashtra that combined they may not be able to even stake the leader of opposition post as it's happened in the parliament.
So you're saying it's
Let's
all
come to the
out and
third
out
point,
politics, which is what
about
it is.
whether it should be extended.
Yeah.
Of course it is all out and out. Third is, in terms of, I'm coming one by one. Third point is related to private sector. The private sector argument has come up again and again. Now, whether society is going to accept it or not, till then you can't impose it. By the same logic, people don't have housing. So does that mean you are going to reserve a room in everyone's house who has a house because we couldn't meet our obligation? Government of India, governments of the state have a responsibility to do so in education and employment, and they are doing it. The private sector issue has come up again and again close to elections. Therefore, if we want to also have a discussion on it, it can't be done when the timing is completely suspect. And it can't be done without taking on board private sector, who are basically the party here, and they talk about meritocracy.
Rahul, give me a second. I'll come back to you. Let me just get Vikram Singh Mehta and Gurcharan Das in. Vikram Singh Mehta.
And the last point.
No, one second, I'll just come back to you. Vikram Mehta, there are actually many studies that have been conducted in the past that have often been quoted about, for instance, the representation of scheduled castes and tribes in India's big corporations, and the numbers have not always been very encouraging. In fact, they seem to suggest, according to various reports, that there is an underrepresentation of backward castes in some of India's biggest companies and in industry houses. So, is there a point that is to be made here that maybe India Inc. needs to do more? The question really is whether it should be through mandatory quotas or some other route.
Look, I think there are 3 points that I'd like to make. First is a generic point. When the Prime Minister of India bowed his head on the steps of Parliament before he entered for the first time, he did so in respect of an institution that upheld our rights as citizens of India. What we are seeing through all these measures are initiatives that basically define our rights in hyphenated ways. We are a Muslim Indian or a Maratha Indian. That goes against the Constitution of India. It goes against the very ethos of the idea of India. Second, the corporate sector has time and time again said that their license to operate, their license to grow will only come if they are able to meet the expectations of society at large. They actually believe in the idea of affirmative action. But the question is, how do they wish to implement it? It is much better for a corporate India to be competitive, to be able to hire people on the basis of merit and capability, than to be forced to do so on the basis of quotas. On the other hand, they do and they will have to set aside funds in order to create the enabling environment, in order to bring up and to remove the discriminations in our society, to create a more equitable society. And that is through education, through funding of education, through funding of training, through basically creation of backward and forward linkages that will allow people who are currently disadvantaged to actually improve their position. So it isn't a question of corporate India saying they don't want to put their weight behind the creation of an equitable, fair society. It's really a question of making sure that in doing so, they do not undermine their competitiveness. And that is, I think, the great risk of these quota systems that are being considered, especially in an environment which is so competitive and so connected in a global environment.
I want to take off on that one point you made to Gurcharan Das. Gurcharan Das, Vikram Singh Mehta says that corporate India does believe in affirmative action. They should be able to set aside funds to create a more equitable society. The question then is corporate India doing enough? But I think the basic question is whether it should be mandatory quotas or whether that's counterproductive.
And I don't know whether you know, the Irani committee report clearly showed, and this was last time, you know, when the OBC quotas were being discussed, and it clearly showed that corporate India has enough representation from the OBC sector. Now, I don't know where the Marathas fall, but it sounds to me like this is desperate politics. You know, we've just had an election and in which Modi has won because because the Indian electorate bought the idea that we need to create jobs and growth, and we need to become, that we don't need to redistribute poverty, which is what quotas do. And therefore, in fact, the best form of inclusion is growth. The best form of inclusion is to create new jobs and not distribute. And you know, I've been in business for 30, 40 years. And I must tell you that today, every single industrialist complains that they cannot get a skilled person. So the answer is skills. The answer is education. And so if the Marathas and the Muslims, the answer is not to lower standards. And this is not to suggest the Marathas and Muslims are any inferior. They're as good. But if they get the right opportunities, the skills, the education, they will be able to compete. And there's a need for jobs right now. Everybody's complaining that there are not enough skilled people for jobs. So I would suggest that instead of going for this sort of rubbish of quotas, and it sounds like a very desperate move on the part of the Maharashtra government, frankly, and it should be absolutely condemned.
Okay, then let me bring Kumar Ketkar in, who knows the politics of Maharashtra better than any of us sitting here. Desperate politics is what Gurcharan Das calls it. Do you see it clearly that way as well? I mean, it's so obvious on the eve of elections. They've moved the ordinance now, you know, to do it this way. Is this actually going to help them politically?
Well, actually, I agree with Gurcharan Das that it is desperate politics on part of Congress and NCP, because if it was a morality of social engineering, which they are arguing now, they are in power for the last 15 years. They did not do it in 1999, they did not do it in 2004, they did not do it in 2009, and they came to realize the sudden awareness of this morality of social engineering after the debacle in Lok Sabha. So obviously, to sort of erase the effect of Lok Sabha election and to garner some votes from the Maratha community, they have done it. It is obviously desperate politics. But the point is, it is not going to benefit them either, even because of this. Because even Marathas have voted Modi. Marathas have voted BJP. It's not a question of whether Modi deserves to win or Modi does not deserve to win. The point is, people in Maharashtra elected only 4 seats of NCP and only 2 seats of Congress, and NCP is actually considered by and large as a representative of the Maratha community. The statistics that you read, the sugar cooperatives, the banks, the educational institutions, they are all essentially run by that particular community.
Do you believe the Marathas are underrepresented?
Absolutely not. Marathas are not underrepresented. The point is, all Marathas cannot be bracketed into one. There are Marathas who are rich, who are elite, who are kulak, and there are Marathas who are poor. So they need reservation on the basis of poverty, not on the basis of caste, because already there is enough representation of Marathas and they are there. Finally, even the Maratha reservation is not perhaps going to stand in the court, because already court has not accepted. Earlier, when the issue came about 8 to 10 years ago, it was rejected by many of the committees who had lawyers in it, constitutional lawyers in it. They felt that even Maratha reservation may not be accepted by court. So obviously the politics and morality is being mixed. Only one small point, that let us not, kind of put vis-a-vis merit versus reservation. because there are Marathas who are absolutely competent from music to mechanical engineering, and they are there and they can get job on the merit despite having reservation.
No, but do you believe the private sector does enough when it comes to the issue of affirmative action, or does it do enough in terms of putting in money for skills and education that both Vikram Mehta and Gurcharan Das were talking about?
Frankly, this question also is redundant or rather a misnomer, because on the one hand, you are talking of less government and more governance. So actually, you are reducing government jobs. You are not recruiting. There is a zero recruitment policy in most of the public sector units. So on the one hand, you have zero recruitment policy, irrespective of reservation or otherwise, and on the other hand, minimum government, and you want to have more reservations. So it doesn't gel. Everybody proclaims from Congress to BJP free market policy. Everybody proclaims that we are India INC, corporate India. Congress also has supported this. In fact, Narendra Modi so far has followed essentially the same policies that Manmohan Singh and Chidambaram followed for the last 10 years. He has not created a new kind of policy or new approach. So far, he has been following the same policy. In that policy, market is important, investments are important, and merit is important, as well as social action is important. So all these factors are taken into care by Congress and NCP also in Maharashtra.